Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Hello everyone. Today we are going to discuss about a very significant topic in Buddhist teachings. First of all, I would like to emphasize on the fact that the teachings that I will be giving is solely based on the Theravada doctrine. Theravada is one of the doctrines preserved within the Buddhist traditions, and which has a very ancient lineage, which we can trace back for a long period, even looking objectively on it. And this Theravada tradition has its own way of interpreting the doctrine, what the Buddha has said. So in this regard, my topic would be letting go, which is a very unique teaching in present day context of Buddhism. The Dhammadharaṇī platform or the YouTube channel, the organizers invited us to give some Dhamma talks related to Buddhism, and in collaboration with the International Institute of Theravada, we'll be providing educated venerables who are capable of giving sermons in English. So you will be able to have a good Dhamma series onwards. I myself would not be able to give frequent Dhamma talks, but two teachers of this institute is willing to discuss about some relevant, very important topics related to Buddhism, which are greatly connected with our lives. The topic of letting go is very popular among today's Buddhists, and it has narrowed down, in my opinion, to a context where we are focusing on the present moment and letting go everything other than focusing what is in front of us. In terms of Theravada teachings, I would like to emphasize, I would like to explain this path, explain this mental quality of letting go from the beginning till the end of attainment. In that regard, I'll be taking different approaches to show how this aspect, spiritual aspect, is related to our threefold practice. In some places, we discuss Dhamma as Dana, Sila, Bhavana. In some occasions, we talk about Sila, Samadhi, Panya. As I assume that most of the people who will be listening to these talks are lay devotees, I would take the approach of Sila, Samadhi, Dana, Sila, Bhavana, beg your pardon, Dana, Sila, Bhavana, in order to elaborate this phenomenon of letting go in relation with the final liberation. Dana, first of all, Dana means giving something to someone which we owned by ourselves. It means in order to give something, in order to perform a dana, first of all we have to own, we have to have the ownership of the thing that is being offered. Just facilitating someone else's offering also amounts to a certain type of a merit, but it is not a full-fledged dana or charity. In order to perform this charity, we have to give up something that belongs to us, to someone. And it is not just discarding. We can just discard something away and let it go. In order to be a dana, we have to offer it or give it to someone, and whether the person would use it or not is a different factor. But just giving up something to someone, according to the Theravada tradition, amounts to dana. So in this regard, we also need to keep in mind as ones who are studying Buddhism, we should always keep in mind that it is very important to stick to the definitions. Because, for example, in our day-to-day life even, we have certain definition. We don't call anyone a mother. We call mother only to the person who gave birth to us, or maybe who looked after us, but biological mother is the one who gave birth to us. So even in normal day-to-day language, we do respect the definitions. If we violate the definitions in our language, we will not be able to understand each other. In the same way, when you are studying a philosophy, there are certain definitions, and those definitions has been fixed by the founder of the religion himself or the close disciples who came after him. Or maybe sometimes two disciples may have would introduce two definitions for the same topic. That's a matter of argument or discussion, how to understand which definition is correct or wrong. But as for my part, I will be explaining the Dhamma based on the definitions made by the Theravada tradition, preserved by the Theravada tradition. So, if we talk about killing, in order for an action to amount to killing, 5 factors have to be completed. That is, it has to be a living being. The person should know that it's a living being. There should be an intention of killing and strategizing verbally or physically, and the death of the living being due to the strategy that we have employed. Only when these 5 factors are completed, killing becomes a full-fledged akusala karma, a complete akusala karma. In order for something to be a dana, according to the tradition, the thing that is offered has to be owned by the person who is giving the dana, making the dana, and that has to be offered to someone, a living person. Living means, now in this regard, the definition doesn't say that the person has to be living. It should be a living being. So even though the person has lived in the past, Theravadians claim that the dana is complete because we have dedicated it to someone. Whether the person knows it or not is not a matter of fact. Whether to decide whether the dana was complete or not. The awareness of the receiver is obviously not a fact. Even in our day-to-day life, for example, if parents are giving or distributing their wealth to their children, most of the cases in Sri Lanka, in countries like in Asia, some countries they just write their inheritance to the children without informing them. Children have no idea sometimes to whom the parents have given their wealth. Now think a parent has written their wealth or properties to a child. The child is not aware of that, and that child has his or her own children, and suddenly without knowing it, the child passes away. What happens according to the law? The inheritance goes to the grandchildren because it passes from father to parent, parents to children. So why was that? Because it was already given to the child, even the child was not aware of it. So the person using it or not is not a matter of fact to decide whether the dana was complete or not. So the Theravadins extend this to the level that now it can happen to a future. For example, we may dedicate something to someone who is not born yet. We may dedicate something to someone. We may dedicate something to a person who is not born yet. He has not appeared yet. But when he is born, it belongs to that person. So likewise, Theravadians take it to the backwards as well. So they consider even you offer to a living who is dead, still the offering was completed. Then how to deal with it? We have different approaches. Who can use it? How the ownership would be shared and all this. So anyway, that's the definition of dana. Now, dana is the act of giving something to someone. Obviously, in this act, we are letting go 2 things. Now, our main topic is the letting go. So, the debate would still exist whether you can give something to someone who has already passed away, whether the dana is complete or not. But we obviously know it can happen to someone who is not born yet, future or the present one, even the person is not aware of it, and even the person doesn't use it. So the letting go aspect is, we obviously know we give dana to the beings who are around us. Or in such occasions, we let go two things. Mainly, we let go the thing that we offer. We let go of the thing that we offer, because it's been considered as mine. For some being, just giving $1 or $2 or few rupees would be not any huge task, but please keep it in mind. There are humans who are not capable of even letting go of something very small. So it's a mental aspect. We are holding it. We consider it as mine. It's very difficult to detach ourselves or deprive ourselves of the property that we own. More value the property is, more difficult the activities. Getting rid of it is. That's something else. But in order to give a dana, we have to give up the property for the sake of someone. While we do that, we are getting rid of the property physically. At the same time, there is a mental aspect of letting go of the attachment towards the property. Now, this attachment, sometimes it's most commonly known as attaching, like considering it as mine and holding it for ourselves. Like attachment and consideration, these are two things. For example, if you think about the Buddha, he also considered his robe as mine. There was an arahant theory called Uppalavanna once. So one monk made an inappropriate request from her, asking for her underrobe. He had different intentions, but she refused it. In the end, she had to give it because he was forcing her. So she considered it as hers. But in most of the case, now in that case, she didn't have any attachment towards the robe, as she was an enlightened being, but she still considered it as mine. So in the very basic level, in the very fundamental level, dana means giving something that is owned by you, which is considered by you as yours. Attachment is a secondary thing. But in most of the cases in the world, when you're talking about ourselves, the worldlings, we are attached to the property that we have, especially the money and the physical properties such as houses, wealth, our lands, plantations, domestic animals, whoever it is. We are attached to these things. It's a very huge attachment is there. So while we are giving this, while we are offering this, we are letting go of the attachment towards this property. If an arahant is again, he's getting rid of the consideration. It as mine. So in this regard, when we are giving dana, we let go of the property itself and also our attachment towards the property. Now, in most of the cases, people may feel like giving something very trifle is not a big issue. But the value of the thing that is being offered, when the value of the thing that is being offered is higher, more difficult the offering is. Now think about someone is willing to donate a kidney, which is a body part of our life, part of our body, which is very helpful and useful, without which it's very difficult to live properly, live peaceful, like healthy. So in such a donation, most of the cases, the person would think many times, how can I cope with this? How can I live without this? So there are many thoughts occurring in such a person, for sure. There's no doubt about that. So the same type of thoughts may appear in some beings, in some humans, while they are offering things that we may give without any hesitation. So what happens is, it's the attachment what matters. Now think about the life of a bodhisattva, the past life of the Buddha. according to the stories, he had sacrificed his life in many lives. He sacrificed his body parts, limbs, in many lives. Like he was just offering some very valueless, like priceless, very cheap things to others. In some occasions, people come and ask that. Whether the person he's hungry or he has nothing to eat, and if the bodhisattva doesn't have anything to be given, and if the person is in need of some flesh or something, so there are many occasions that he cut his flesh and offered the person. Offering is always good. We consider it as a nice activity. So he was a person who could offer his flesh. Now, it's unimaginable for us. How could such a being do that? But for him, it was nothing. So, for us, maybe offering $1, a few rupees would not be a huge thing. But please consider, there are certain beings, certain humans who are struggling even to offer such small thing. For the bodhisattva, offering some piece of flesh would be nothing compared to what he has done in the samsara. But for us, it's a huge operation. We may not even think in this life to offer some body parts to someone. So therefore, the difficulty of dana depends on the difficulty of letting go of the attachment towards the property or the thing that is being offered. So dana is the basic level of letting go of things. Then moves into sila. In sila, we get rid of our physical and verbal ill behaviors, bad conduct. So this is also a letting go. What do we let go? We let go of our behaviors, our habits, which are not healthy to us in our spiritual aspect. Dana is getting rid of the thing that we offer and also the attachment towards that. Yeah, we just let go of it and we may try to forget it. There sometimes we may miss the thing that we offer, but it's still you can cope with it. But when we are dealing with sila, the letting go is much stronger. Why? We have to prohibit ourselves from performing our habits, certain habits that we came into a conclusion that is not beneficial for me and for others. So, in that regard, because the consciousness is always with you, the urge to do such activity recurs again and again. It's very difficult to suppress. You cannot get rid of that because you are always with your thoughts. So, and sila is not something that you perform like dana and you just forget about it and stays away from it. Focus on some other activity. Since consciousness is always with you, wherever you go, that urge may come up. So that letting go has to be done with a lot of mindfulness. There should be a lot of effort, a lot of energy, endurance in order to continue in this process. So sila in sila, we let go of things, we let go of our habits, which is indeed a very, very daunting task, I would say. More the sila, the number of precepts we are protecting, more the difficult the task is. Now, lay people mostly follow the 5 precepts as Buddhists. Even that seems to be a huge burden in lay life for some. Now think about a samanera who is practicing 10 precepts, and it can be increased or it can be elaborated at 109 precepts as a samanera. A monk would practice 220 main rules and thousands of other minor rules. So they have to be very aware and they have to get rid of certain habits in order to keep these precepts, and that's for their own benefit. So anyhow, keeping the precepts is getting rid of certain habits that we have considered something not useful to us. Now, normally, think Think about a mosquito landing on your body and start to extract blood from you. The habit is just to crush it, to get rid of the pain. But after someone has become Buddhist or learned that it's a sin, it's a bad deed, they would feel to restrain from that activity. So then when a mosquito flows in, he or she has to be very mindful not to do that. The temptation is there to do that, but it has to be prevented. Now think about sexual misconduct. It's a very appealing activity for some. And one who has got used to that, it's very difficult for them to stop. So in order to prevent this, in order to stop this, he has to control his or her urge towards the lust. Think about drinking alcohol. When you get addicted to it, it's very difficult to get rid of that. So likewise, getting rid of certain bad habits is much difficult than just getting rid of some physical stuff, object. Because since the consciousness is with you, since the emotions are with you, you always have to keep them at bay and do your day-to-day activities. So it's a letting go, it's a huge letting go. It's a much, much advanced letting go than giving up an object for someone. Then we move on to another aspect of letting go, that is developing samadhi. Dana, sila, bhavana. Bhavana is twofold, samatha bhavana and vipassana bhavana. Samatha bhavana is developing a samadhi, concentration on a particular single object or a group of objects. So a person who is protecting the sila may still have some thoughts that are not very conducive to the spiritual practice. Now, always keep it in mind, why do we follow this dana, sila, bhavana path? In order to attain a liberation, which we call the nibbana, and a state that has to be elaborated to explain very deeply. So, path is the final goal. We have to walk on this. So, in order to reach that level, you have to let go of certain things. And so there are certain things the Buddha and the spiritual leaders have listed that these are conducive to your spiritual practice and these are not. Some are detrimental. So we have to get rid of the detrimental stuff and cultivate the conducive stuff within ourselves. So a person who has developed or established himself or him or herself in a proper conduct called sila may not perform certain physical and verbal activities which are against the ethics or which are not helpful to his practice, but still may entertain some thoughts related to lust, thoughts related to anger, maybe to doubt, related to doubt and so forth, and still it's better that he doesn't break the sila, but still his mind he may have some certain pleasures within mind and also may do some certain physical and verbal activities that are not against the basic set of rules, precepts. But in order to reach the higher level, the next level of the practice, which is called samadhi, developing samatha meditation, he has to get rid of all these thoughts even. In this regard, we have to say, according to Theravada teachings, developing samadhi is not becoming a thoughtless person or not becoming a person who does not think about anything. In samatha meditation, we have to focus on a certain particular object or a group of objects, similar group of objects. For example, the 32 body parts is not a single object, the 9 attributes of the Buddha, but the breath would be a single object, similar, like one can say it's in breath and out breath, 2 objects. When the nimitta appears, it's just a single object. So, in samatha meditation, we are narrowing our space, narrowing our focus into a particular object. So, when we are doing so, we need to get rid of all the other irrelevant thoughts, unnecessary thoughts. Only then we'll be able to develop the samadhi. For For example, while you are meditating, thoughts may come up, that's natural. But the problem is if you entertain, if you go with them, mind follows them, goes astray from the practice. Enjoy such thought. Keep on fantasizing, creating a story. That's where we lose the concentration. If we want to attain the bliss of samadhi and go to the next level of our practice, it's a must that we have to let go of all the unnecessary thoughts, which are very tempting. It's very difficult for us to just to focus on something because our mind tends to go and find out various objects, because otherwise we may feel dull or bored. The best example is if you are supposed to stay in a room for 10, 12, 15, 30, 60 hours, like what happened in COVID, during the COVID. They are frustrated, right? They wanted something new, to experience something new. The desire to know new things is against the samadhi. Samadhi means you are satisfied with one single object in your mind. In dana, by giving up certain things, you become satisfied with what you have. For example, if I'm going to offer my phone, I can only do it if only I can satisfy myself without it, right? I may give up certain sila, I will give up certain bad habits and observe a sila. That's only I'm satisfied with the activities that I can do. So there is a boundary always. Things that I may not do. In samadhi, the field is much narrower. I'm just satisfied with one single object or some group of objects. So as long if you stay in samadhi for 1 hour, you have to be satisfied with the object of the breath. If you're thinking about other stuff, about tomorrow's Dhamma talk or what we have given yesterday, what is we are going to cook, what I'm going to cook for today's night, and where I'm going to have my dinner, you're never going to develop your samadhi. So in order to develop the samadhi, you have to let go of all the other objects, all the other thoughts, entertainment. So it's up to us to decide which path we want to walk upon. Whether you walk upon the entertaining path or walk upon the samadhi path. This is all about a person who is interested in a spiritual growth and finding the final liberation. So when we are developing, if you want to develop samadhi, we have to get rid of these thoughts which are not related to our object, meditation practice. It's a letting go. It's a very difficult type of letting go. Now, in the sense of sila, we are not performing certain actions that seems to be very unhealthy in our spiritual progress, which seems to be an unwholesome deed. And it's not that we are supposed to do, we get the opportunity to do all these activities all the time. We perform certain activities like bad behaviors. Even the worst person in the world would be performing these bad behaviors only for a few times per day. It's not that most of the day he's not performing such bad activities, right? So if someone is protecting the sila precepts, he or she, yes, they have to be mindful all the time because the urge can be there to perform such an activity. But the opportunity of such activity is always lesser compared to the thoughts, because thoughts are always generating in your mind. The opportunity to kill an animal being or steal something, to have sexual misconduct or to lie to someone or to take alcohol. Think about this, right? If you are in a very good confined room with a good aircon, alone, you cannot break any of these 5, right? If there is no alcohol in the room, for example. If there is no mosquitoes, it's confined. There's nothing to steal, it's your own room. There's no person to conduct the sexual misconduct. No person for you to lie. And there's nothing to be taken as intoxication. And we also don't perform such activities all the time because it's not, if you keep on doing such activity, we ourselves feel the regret, right? So therefore, it's not that Getting rid of sila is much harder than getting rid of something by offering. Sila is much advanced than dana, obviously. We have to be always mindful on this. But think about samadhi. If you are supposed to develop a samadhi, we have to always be in alert, not to get into this, to entertain these wrong thoughts, which is a much difficult thing. Now, then one can argue, how about you are just practicing for 1 hour per day, or half an hour per day? Is that the only period that we are not supposed to entertain our thoughts? No. If you want to develop a samadhi in your life, it's not only during the meditation sitting that you are supposed to get rid of wrong thoughts. We need to keep a very healthy thought pattern throughout the whole day. Otherwise, the level of samadhi would drop down. Your capacity to enter into higher samadhi drops down. Now, I think some of you have heard about some yogis losing their jhana. None of them lose their jhana while they are in the jhana. They lose the jhana while doing some other activity. Maybe walking and see someone and the lust arises. Fear arises hearing some sound. No one loses the jhana or samadhi while he or she is in the samadhi. After they have emerged from the samadhi, the normal activity, a thought comes, a lustful thought comes, and they lose the opportunity, lose the capacity of getting back into the samadhi. That's what they are losing. That's called losing the samadhi. Losing samadhi is not the samadhi is rising and passing away. It's not the passing away of the samadhi which has arisen. It's a natural phenomenon. Losing samadhi means you lose the capacity, your ability to go into samadhi as you used to do. So this capacity is lost normally in day-to-day life while encountering some strong objects or while strong defilements arising in you or performing some bad activity, especially when strong thoughts come in you. So in order to develop a samadhi, it's not that one has to let go of thoughts during the meditation session. In order to have a progress, one has to maintain this discipline throughout the day. Only then a progress can be achieved, even expected. So this is a much higher type of letting go. Samadhi doesn't mean just staying without thinking anything. No. It's not the Theravada tradition of practice. Theravada tradition, Samatha Bhavana, has specific objects. We have 38 objects in 40 types of meditations. We are supposed to focus on them. And there are techniques, how to focus, how to develop the focus, how to look into this, what sort of attitudes that we should have and all this. That's called developing samadhi. Then comes to the next stage of vipassana, samatha vipassana, second level of bhavana. In vipassana, we are getting rid of, it's a much advanced letting go, I would say. Because in samadhi, we cannot entertain, we cannot have thoughts, appealing thoughts that are causing defilements, or we cannot enjoy the defilements within ourselves. We have to get rid of them and focus on the object, and also we have to consider the bad effects of defilements and detach ourselves from them. But in a samadhi, a high state of samadhi, even a person comes out of it, and while he's in a good state of mind, immediately after samadhi or when the day is very pleasant, when the mind is calm, he or she may enjoy it. He may or she or get attached to this. Especially we call bhava raga, attachment to the jhanas. It's natural when you have a very high blissful experience in your spiritual aspect of the life. You get attached to it. That's why even Brahmas are attached to their life. And that attachment is very subtle, and it can be very strong even. That's why a person becomes sad when he or she loses his meditation bliss. So just practicing samadhi, you have to be very disciplined. At the same time, you may still enjoy the samadhi. You are not supposed to enjoy sensual thoughts, but the thoughts about the samadhi, appreciation, the mana, these things are not detrimental. Detrimental means they are not going to make you lose the samadhi. It's not going to destroy your samadhi. But when it comes to vipassana, even that spiritual bliss that we are experiencing cannot be considered as so valuable. In vipassana, the discipline is very strict. Whatever object you get, whatever object you think of, you have to consider it as a non-self entity, not as I, not as mine, either as impermanent, a reality which begets suffering, a non-self reality, reality which is caused by causes, conditioned reality, realities that arise and passes away, realities that are opposite of the unconditioned bliss of Nibbana. So consider them as roga, as a sickness, ganda, as a boil, salla, as a sort of a rod that has gone through our body. These are metaphors. So always think. It's maybe you may think, is it a negative way of thinking? No, it's just considering the truth of the world. If there is a truth, we have to understand it, right? Just forgetting about our death, the future death that is inevitable, just living without considering about it is not an admirable thing. Especially if you have a rebirth. For example, someone may take some drugs and completely forget about the hardships in his life and spend his life like in the clouds for a certain period. One who is aware would know. He's just forgetting about trying to forget. He's just trying to live in a different world. But as after the effect of the drug is gone, he has to face the reality in the same way. Even though we don't consider it about the true natures of the life, its effects will be felt. Effects will be felt. We would surely get sick one day, get old and die one day. So considering the real aspect of the life is always considered something higher, valuable. So in the vipassana practice, even the samadhi, which is very, very blissful, which is very, very appealing to the spiritual mind, has to be dealt with proper intellectual understanding. Intellectual means wisely, I mean. Even using the knowledge of the book and applying it and seeing how it's impermanent, suffering and non-self. So whatever the object you may get, even the present moment, or even you think about the past, as Buddha has mentioned, when you think about the past, you have to consider in terms of vipassana. The nama rupas have passed away. Whenever you see someone in vipassana meditation, you have to not to consider him as the mother or father or someone whom you like, just as bunch of nama rupa. But having a samadhi, you may just have a very peaceful and good association with others. It's not very relevant that you have to consider them as nama rupa and so forth and get rid of the subtle attachment towards them. Subtle means like considerations and all this. But even just to yourself. But in vipassana practice, you are practicing vipassana meditation, yourself, others, even the samadhi that you experience has to be considered as a phenomenon of nama. So therefore, the discipline is very higher. Vipassana, he becomes very serious. You have to let go of entertaining yourself with samadhi even. So it's a very higher level of discipline, and the letting go is much harder. Then comes the final level of letting go, that is just removing the defilements. That defilements is the removal of the uneradicated defilements that remain latent within us, which we are not aware of in that level. Now, while we are giving a Dhamma talk, we are not aware that there is a latent ignorance or craving within us, which we call the anusaya. One cannot just get rid of that. In order to get rid of that, we have to keep on understanding again and again, like in vipassana. So the ignorance that we possessed gradually reduce. Now think about someone who is under counseling. for an experience that he or she had in the past, in the beginning of his life. A child who was strongly, who was scared of some sudden incident, or who had a phobia or some reason, has some phobia or something because of some incident that he or she had, or because of a child abuse, whatever it is. So if the incident was not properly dealt with, even at the latter stages of the life, the person may have difficulties in coping with similar situations. And we know there are such many occasions, many incidents in the world. So what happens? We see abnormality in the person and we take him to the psychiatric, and he starts to do the counseling. So can it be removed? The psychiatric would say, just forget about it. No, it cannot be removed. He would not say not to think about it mostly. He would make you to understand it, give an understanding about the situation. Because if it's a child abuse, it's not going to affect you as a grown-up adult, something which happened at the lowest, at the younger stage. And you have changed, the world has changed. It's not that people are going to attack you in the same way, and it's not that your children will be treated in the same way by everyone. And it's not that every person in the world are like this, not abusers. If the child was afraid of some kind of animal, he would say, no, understand about these things. And they would make him to encounter with such animals and get rid of the fears and to see that they are not harmful as you think. So what they are doing, the counselor is doing, is removing a certain type of ignorance, emotional ignorance, and the emotions will be removed. Fear is there, sometimes too much attachment can be removed, because showing that the reality, it could be removed. Therefore, in such counseling, what the psychiatric is doing is enlightening the person. Even though while the person was in his normal day-to-day activities, the ignorance was still there. It was not present in his mind. He had the danger or possibility of going back into the ignorance, and the emotions would come out. Why is that? The ignorance, he's rid of the ignorance. According to Buddhist teaching, that ignorance exists within ourselves. Not as a consciousness, but in a subtle level. We call it the anusaya level, the latent level. The ignorance may come up at any time. So what the counselor is doing, enlighten the person during many sessions. So more he gets understanding, more he gets clarity, slowly the ignorance would go down, but sometimes it may come up and the emotions may come up. But at a certain stage, if he understands fully, if the darkness is removed, the light is lit, light of wisdom is lit, then experiencing the same object in a similar way is not going to affect him. He's free from that ignorance. So process is considering it very wisely, going for counseling, doing the homework. Same way a person who wants to get rid of the ignorance towards the life sees the nama and rupa as it is again and again and for many times, getting rid of the ignorance slowly. At a certain level, when he starts to fully understand this reality and sees the nibbana, the object of nibbana, that ignorance will be removed, because he has a comparison now. Otherwise, he didn't have any idea about how it is, the state devoid of these aggregates. He sees the bliss of it, the comfort of it. Ignorance is removed, attachment is removed. So then, it's the utmost level of letting. It's a very high level of letting you of the defilements, latent defilements, which you cannot do like giving up, like giving dana, or just by suppressing. It's only through understanding. That is also letting. It's called chago patinissago. What we let go is the ignorance, and then together with it, the craving towards its life. At the same time, while we are getting rid of the defilements, another letting go happens, which is the letting go of or getting rid of the suffering to come. Then you would say, okay, why are we letting, why is it necessary to let go of the suffering? Because if something is suffering, we are not holding it, none of us want to fall into suffering. But the thing is, when I say the suffering to come, to us it's not felt as suffering. Think about the lives that are supposed to come. We like to be a deva, to enjoy the pleasures in the deva realm, to be born as a prince in the royal family, maybe in Britain or whatever. Many would have such thoughts, even though they don't express this. Some may have thoughts of being a deva or enjoying the pleasures in the next life, because it's very difficult for us to imagine of a state where the consciousness is no more, the nama rupa is no more. We fear that actually. If someone doesn't have a proper understanding of Dhamma, he fears the Nibbana, he fears the most. The Nibbana. Nibbana is the most dreadful object, it appears to be. So, opposite, the life, bhava that is to come, we are very much attached to that. We are attached to this life itself, at the same time lives to come. That attachment is based on ignorance. And when we have ignorance and attachment, we have accumulated a lot of karma in the past. So when we are with the karma, we are bound with the suffering to come, bound with the lives to come, to which we have attached. Because we don't want to lose this experience. So it means we are attached to, we like for the continuation of this existence. And we get rid of that. We get rid of the attachment towards all the nama and rupa, and we get rid of that suffering, we call. Actually, which we considered as something blissful in the first place. That is called getting rid of the suffering that has not arisen yet. Anupanna dukkha. So, now I think I have covered all types of letting goes in Theravada teachings. You let go of the objects in dana, you let go of the attachment towards the object while performing dana, you let go of the bad habits, behavioral patterns while practicing sila, you get rid of the thoughts, entertaining thoughts in order to develop the samadhi, you get rid of the the thoughts of enjoying the samadhi in vipassana, and you get rid of the latent defilements, especially the craving, by removing the ignorance. Craving towards this life, you have to get rid of that. When you remove the ignorance, the craving, attachment towards this life will be removed. Ignorance is, we get rid of that, but what we are actually getting rid of is the craving, because that's what is appealing to us, right? We like to possess this. And then together with that, we get rid of the suffering or the lives to come. That's called attaining Nibbana. So, with that we attain the Nibbana. See, Nibbana and attain Nibbana are two things, but happens at the same time. Anyway, so I hope you had a better picture about the concept of letting go under the Theravada doctrine. So, and wish you all the best, and may you be able to let go of all the things and get rid of the samsara as soon as possible. And the Dhammadharaṇī YouTube channel, mainly run by Mr. Suminda Salpita Korala. Also thank him for inviting us, IIT, International Institute of Theravada, into this channel. So monks here would be able to spread the Dhamma, and many would benefit out of the talks. So in future, two venerables, teachers of IIT, will be conducting programs for the entire semester. When time permits, I may also come time to time and give a Dhamma talk. And wish you all the best. And there will be some other venerables are also performing the talks in this channel. So hope you will be able to embark the journey towards the very high goal of liberation in Buddhism, step by step. Okay, wish you all the best. Theravada.